Hello, everyone. My name is Nicolas Polimanakos. I work behind the scenes here at NORWAC in various ways. Today, I'm with Jason Holley. Hi, Jason.
Hello.
Today, we're talking about the Northwest Astrological Conference, which is called NORWAC, that happens May 22nd to the 26th, 2025, just outside Seattle. The conference is sold out in person, but it's a hybrid conference, which means it's available to attend and to view online. And you can go to norwac.net and find all the information, the registration prices, the schedule, the speaker lineups, the titles, everything's on there. Today, I'm going to talk to Jason about his two lectures and a pre-conference workshop that he's doing. Jason, on Friday, a pre-conference workshop, 9 in the morning Pacific, May 23rd, you are doing a pre-conference workshop called Rewilding Astrology and Rewilding Our Souls, an eco psychology of the night. That's that's incredible, by the way, title that you have right there. Uh, I'll say a little bit of the copy here. Zodiac means quote unquote circle of animals. In this workshop, we will explore how aspects of self-suppressed in our inner and outer ecosystems can be given opportunities for expression, relationship, and participation through astrological practice. So, Jason, uh, tell us a little bit about the pre-conference workshop.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it emerged in part because Laura said, will you do something like there was interest in me doing something on, broadly speaking, mental health, like a mental health kind of orientation. And, we're not going to go in a clinical direction with that, of course. We're going to go in an astrological direction. And, the biggest thing I say to people sometimes is like, when you look at a horoscope, the first thing that it announces immediately is that this person is multiple, right? That we're all multiplicities. We all have all these different parts and places that both show up as parts of self and also show up in the world around us, like each planet, each sign. And so that circle of animals thing is really one of the inspirations of my work. That the zodiac really says you are a wild teeming ecosystem inside, and you're also part of a teeming ecosystem here. And when we're thinking about work with people, we often see through the horoscope, we can kind of see how certain animals kind of tend to dominate the situation, the same way that the human animal has dominated the Earth ecosystem, right? So, and that doesn't really go well, as it hasn't gone well here. So, a lot of what we're going to be working with is how do you relate to, connect to the animals or creatures or planets or gods who tend to be kind of exiled from consciousness, but have their own effects from the outside. Like, so there's a rewilding, right? There's a remembering of our internal psychic diversity, intrapsychic diversity. And so we're going to name a little of that, but we're really going to go right to working with and finding out how do we create bridges through astrological symbolism, to allow dissociated parts of self to find their way back into the circle. And so we'll be doing, both some case studies, but also some live work with our own material of, rewilding, meaning, kind of like regenerative farming where you try to help the soil that has been so leached of all its nutrients. You had to re-nutrify it, right? Or you rewild a forest by not just focusing on the trees and the timber, but by all the understory. So it's a similar approach with the psyche.
Wow. That's a okay, let me just say this as someone who's been in our industry and conferences and stuff many over the years and listened and seen many things. This is totally uniquely you, Jason. I've heard and I've seen many people over the years who have attended your workshops. I've seen them even in physical, like at NORWAC. Oh, I'm going to attend Jason's workshop. I see them in the morning and they're walking in, and then I see them after, and I see a different look in their eye
Mm,
and I could tell that they were engaged, just not mentally, but
mm,
with different parts of themselves. And you could tell by the way they're walking out and a certain type of like awareness and glow of something new or something that came through that was profound to them. So,
mm.
I just know this about your work and especially with your workshops. So anybody out there watching, you know, if you can actually attend this workshop, even if you don't attend NORWAC for the whole weekend, you can purchase it on your own and just attend that. If you are thinking about purchasing the online full weekend, if you do purchase Jason's pre-conference lecture or any of the pre or post-conference workshops, you do get a discount on that too. Again, all of that is on norwac.net. You could see the information there. Well, that's an interesting way to start off the weekend of NORWAC. When we get into to the Friday, Saturday, Sunday portion of the conference, on Saturday, on the 24th, you were doing a lecture called Underworlds, a felt sense archaeology of Pluto's domains. So interesting to talk about this right now, considering while we're recording this, we are in the middle of a Mars Pluto opposition that we're doing this week, and the Sun in Taurus, little T squares, so very Plutonian themes here this week. Tell us a little bit about this lecture, Jason.
Yeah, I mean, this is sort of coming from uh, the reality that in Greece, Hades was both a place and a person. And so we often talk about the person of Pluto or the person of Hades, but Hades was a place and it had many different domains, many different layers of the underworld. It wasn't just the underworld. There were many different zones. And so we're really going to look at the sort of psychic or psychological cartography of Pluto and the different layers. So that's the major thing is that it really is about this experience of different places. And it's also about, I mean, the biggest thing I would say about why explore this is that pretty much everything in modernity and Anglophone culture in particular, everything interesting has been put in the underworld, right? All your emotions get stuff pushed down there. Your unwelcome thoughts and memories get pushed down there. You put your ancestors down there rather than living with them on an ongoing basis. Everything gets pushed to the underworld. So why do all the mythological traditions of the West have these big underworld journeys where you have to go down there? It's because everything interesting is actually down there. And so, whereas in, many cultures or like land-based cultures, the underworld is like they go in and out all day long. Like it's not like, oh, the underworld. But it's different for most people. Anybody who speaks English, it's different for them.
Yeah, yeah.
So we're going to really explore, how what are the domains there and get a little more complex about it so that when you see a Pluto transit coming or you see a Pluto natally, you'll have a set of sort of landscapes and beings who you can imagine. So you can really see the hologram of the possibilities of a Pluto experience. And so I think it'll really enrich and dimensionalize Pluto beyond just like scary and transformational. We'll be talking about what kind of scary and what kind of transformational.
No, that's great. You know what's popping up for me right now is in the last 10 years, culturally, anything with the myths has come across in different vessels. One of them is there's a musical. Am I correct on
Oh
this?
yeah. Yeah.
There's a musical,
Hades Town.
Hades or
Yeah.
Hades. But for me, from a cultural gaming video game sense, one of the best video games that come out in the last 10 years is actually called Hades. And it's a beautiful, fun game to play, but it's brutal. But you actually learn along the way the different levels
Wow.
of Hades and how he's journeying to the top,
Right,
going
right.
through Elysian Fields and all these different
Yeah,
places.
exactly. Exactly.
I think it's very much in the consciousness the last so many years through art and creativity and how it's come across. So I just want to say that, and that's
No,
fascinating.
I used to, as a therapist, I don't do therapy now, although I supervise other people integrating astrology into therapy. But, I used to work with younger clients who were in the gaming space, and that was like a really accessible mythology, like we could actually use the game as if it were a dream of the person, right? So
Yeah.
and you really and then you can kind of as you would in a dream you can like double click on a particular figure or boss or landscape or NPC or whatever,
Yeah.
and open it up symbolically, and it could then connect to the horoscope and open things up. So I totally
Oh,
I,
yeah, I feel you on this one. It's we'll talk about that another time because I have some
okay.
ideas about stuff like this. But again, amazing lecture on the Saturday Underworlds, a felt sense of archaeology of Pluto's domains, and and then on Sunday you do your third lecture here at 1:45 p.m. Pacific. It's called Place and Psyche, Land, Sky, and Soul in Conversation. And by the way, when I read the title of this, I was like, oh, what's Jason doing here? And then I read the copy and I realized what this is. In a sense, we're dealing with astrocartography or relocation charts, but in a different way, in a different sense, right?
Yeah, exactly. The basic idea is most of the time when I see astrocartography, it's usually like, what's the good place for you? What's the bad place? Or where will you meet your soulmate? Or, it's kind of evaluating places against each other, all of which is fine. But this is going to be much more about you live somewhere. It's probably not where you were born these days. Some people it is, but a lot of people it's not. How can your relocation chart actually help you live there and connect to the land and the place and the people that you're with? Acknowledging that, frankly, I mean, most people don't just have a tabula rasa of options and then they
Yeah.
just pick one. Most of us are there because that's where the work was, that's where the family is, that's where you were displaced to as a refugee. Like, that's the most of the world. So this is a locational astrology that's really about how can the local sky when you were born help you connect and relate? And then also psychologically speaking, what I find is that it's an amazing thing. The locational chart is so amazing because it also helps you see like which animals in me find habitat in this place,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
also which ones recede, who are often dominant in other places. So you really get to sort of feel like, oh, this is a place where I can finally feel the Venusian energy. And that animal finds a habitat. That's again, that eco ways of thinking are kind of one of my ways of experiencing life. So which animals find habitat here? And then how do you help the ones who are kind of used to being, forward, and they're like, I don't know how, they were on the ascendant, now they're in the eighth house or something.
Right, right.
What do I do now? Or an eighth house one is now at the midheaven. It's used to being kind of hidden and now it's like super visible. So all of those types of dynamics, that's what we will be
Oh
speaking.
no, that's really good. I don't I think Laura does these schedules and I know the speakers submit there's things but it's interesting that this one falls on the Sunday after how you start the Friday with the rewilding astrology.
Yeah, yeah, no,
You
yeah, the animals.
understanding the different animals and then here when we're out there wherever you are, where do you find, it's interesting how this laid out here. Yeah, so you're doing a pre-conference workshop in the two lectures and with as all the speakers at NORWAC, they're involved at some point in time during the weekend with a Q&A that happens online only in between the lecture tracks. And so I think you're happening at this point. It might be, if I look here, I can't remember if you're on your Saturday or
I
Sunday.
think it's Sunday. I think,
It's on the Sunday. Yeah, you're with Nick Lasky and Gemini Bread and Celeste Brooks, Gigi Corvo. That happens at 5 p.m.
yeah. And
on the
one thing I want to share, I meant to
yeah.
say, like, I think it's important, is that, my work these days is besides in person, I do a lot of in-person retreats and workshops and sacred site tours. The other thing I spend my time doing is online experiential education. So I would want people to know who are virtual signups that I will be designing all of the above with a very strong attention to. In fact, for the locational astrology one, we will have a live opportunity because you'll all be in different locations. Like,
Yeah.
we're all having a different NORWAC, right? Like the group in Seattle's having one, but you're having one wherever you are. And we won't go really far into that, but we will actually make use of specifically that. And in the workshop also, there's going to be some experiential work, and it is very much designed to meet you in the virtual space as well. And I just want to say that because I know that's a really important piece. Like, I'm highly attuned to the virtual reality of the conference. That's what I do for a living. So I just kind of want to just say that since that's where
No, I'm really glad that you did say that, Jason, because it's interesting this hybrid model and what's happened, and it's still in flux. It's there's
Yeah.
you know there's we have there's an acceptance of how we're mixing virtual and real worlds. However, we do it's one-on-one practice, no client practice. It used to be back in the day where you're seeing a person face to face, or you did a recording for them, or was on the phone, right? And everything's changed, and mostly for the better. I mean, for astrology, but still, I think it's young in its infancy with technology, and it's good to hear, to expand. How can we do this? Can we do that? Can
Well,
we
and
bring?
some
Yeah,
things and some things actually work better that way. I
yeah,
mean, I used to be very skeptical because I've done, I'm a therapist and all. In person, and in person, of course, is a very, specific and unique experience. But there are some things like movement. Sometimes if people are in the same room together and they're asked to do some movement work or something, that's harder to do. But when you're in Zoom, you can do that in your own world and still be here. So, we
yeah.
will there's special things to both versions, if
Yeah, definitely. And also too, for those who are thinking about attending online, the other part of this is in each of the rooms, we have a room monitor that's there working with the conference. So in a sense, they're with you while you're there watching live. And I know it's encouraged for the speakers to take questions. A lot of times at the end of lectures, speakers take questions, and we do take questions from the chat for those online. Besides that, I'm going to be jumping in and out online. I know Samantha, another astrologer who helps facilitate the online breakout rooms, like on Saturday nights, having a virtual party over there, like it's to do with your showing up as your rising sign or dressing up a certain like a costume party. Last year, I was bringing people on a Saturday night into the rooms I was grabbing in person, and there's a bunch of other things that create a certain type of free flowing online, its own little community on there. So, again, if anybody's this calls to you, you feel connected, you like to do this, you just go to the website, norwac.net. You can see the registration for the whole weekend, or you can register by the day or for a singular pre or post conference workshop, et cetera, et cetera. Jason, thanks for coming on. I'm psyched to see you soon.
Yeah, you know,
It's
as
going to be
well.
good to see you, and I appreciate you coming on.
Thanks.
So, on that note, we'll see everybody on the next video. Bye.